How's that? Good? All right, there we go. Thank you. Thanks for having me today. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit of talk about from plankton to whales. What ends up happening here, excuse me, at this lecture, you'll see it at, turn on any of your social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. You're bombarded with the same horrible stories of Long Island. Things are in crisis, fish are dying, toxic algae blooms, toxic red tides, dead turtles. Just very bleak outlook for Long Island, that it's just doomed, we're doomed. And unfortunately, these are things that are happening, but unfortunately I think what happens is too often we forget that there's other stuff there. We hear all this news and we're like, who cares? Why should I not put fertilizer on my lawn? Why should I recycle? The world is doomed, why do we care? So in this talk, I'm gonna run through it because I got a lot of slides, but I'm gonna tell you why we should care, and it's because of the cool stuff that's here on Long Island. Everything that's here I've taken pictures of myself all within the last 2 years. So these aren't history pictures, these are things that are happening right now, right here on Long Island. So, as the talk is from plankton to whales, we're gonna start small, we're gonna talk about plankton. Not SpongeBob plankton, but actual plankton, which by definition is anything that's at the mercy of the current. So they could be microscopic or they could be fairly large. The most important of the plankton though are the phytoplankton. They take nutrients, sunlight, create more usable products, which are then fed on by other types of plankton. Not this guy again, he keeps hopping up in here, but more importantly, Copepods. Now, when Nickelodeon made SpongeBob, they actually did a good job with plankton. He kind of looks like a copepod. These are our copepods. So this is now fed, these are feeding on the phytoplankton. And then these are going to fuel everything else above this on the food chain that I'm going to talk about as we move on here. So what other types of things are plankton like? So these are copepods. They spend their whole life in the plankton. That's as big as they get. They're tiny. They're about flea size. But then there's a lot of other animals that spend part of their life as plankton. So like this little porcelain crab larvae. A parchment worm crab larvae. When this settles and matures, it looks like this. Mantis shrimp spend their life, part of their life is plankton. When it develops, it'll look like this, about 8 inches. Pretty nasty, watch out for those claws. We get different other types of crustaceans, such as crabs, which as they develop, more recognizable, but then they'll settle into a lady crab, or rock crab, spider crab, depending on whatever it is. But these last ones, you can see the little finnerets, and that's our lady crab. Fish also spend some time as plankton. So last year, I was out collecting plankton, and I caught this little one. Microscopic, I mean, big enough that you can see with your eyes, but not big enough to tell what it was. But with a macro lens, I noticed these 2 little fins, which are the giveaway. When this little fish grows up, it's a blowfish, northern puffer. When it gets bigger, it gets even more inflated. What other fish? Some tropical fish. We get a lot of tropical fish in our waters that drift here as plankton, as larvae. This little fish is a type of surgeon fish, which when it matures looks like this. We get jelly type animals. You know, often now we think of plankton as these tiny little things, but jellyfish and their kin are plankton as well. Right now, if you follow me on Facebook, I posted a video of a whole swarm of these. These are clapper bell medusae, hydra medusae. They're about this big, about the size of a marble, but they just swim around collecting and eating plankton, copepods and other little microorganisms. Ctenophores, comb jellies. These are really cool. They don't hurt you. They're not a jellyfish. They don't sting. But when you bump into them, they'll bioluminesce. So at night on your boat, or just go down to the beach and rush your hands in the water, you'll bump into them. It's like a little light show of little blues and greens. But again, they're plankton. Fully grown, they'll be about that round. Jellyfish, the moon jellyfish. They can get about dinner plate size. They do have stinging tentacles, but they're not going to hurt you because they're fairly small, unlike the lion's mane jellyfish. Lion's mane jellyfish is one of the largest jellyfish in the world. They can have an 8-foot bell, so the body can be about 8 feet, tentacles trailing about 100 feet. That's a pretty big animal to be considered plankton. But again, it's at the mercy of the current. It just kind of goes and stinging copepods, larval fish, any little other plankton that's in the mix. So what else eats this soup of plankton? Well, we're going to start getting a little bit not plankton animals. The skeleton shrimp. This is a little shrimp, only about this big, lives in seaweed, and again, unless you're picking up seaweed looking for it, you'll never see it. Looks like a monster, probably some movies were based after. but they just grab plankton from the water as it drifts by. These are fairly common on our South Shore. The mole crab. As a kid, I used to dig these up because they'd be in the surf zone. You could dig them up. You pull them in your hand, put them back in the sand. They bury right in the sand. They put up their little feeding tentacles to catch plankton from the water. What else eats plankton? Well, fish. This is the silver side, also known as, if you do any fishing, it's also known as a shiner. It's also known as a spearing. It goes by a bunch of different names, but they feed on plankton. And as they eat the plankton, they then turn that fuel into the next group of animals that are a little bit bigger, such as the alewife. This is an important time of year for alewife. There's a lot of work going on with the Peconic Estuary program. They're doing a lot of work to try to restore our rivers, because what happens is this time of year, the alewife return from the ocean. They go up freshwater streams. Now, one thing about this talk I want everyone to kind of understand too is, often people say, well, you're a marine biologist, you're at Stony Brook, you're a fish guy, you're on the water all the time. This is why you see all this kind of stuff. Everybody here can see what I'm showing you. You just have to open your eyes and pay attention to your surroundings. This pond is right in front of the county court system in Riverhead. It's right across the parking lot. Hundreds and thousands, actually, of people come there every day, drive right by, never even stop to see what's there. And this is something that's been going on for a long time. Again, these fish migrate from the ocean, they go up these streams, they swim into fresh water to spawn, and then they turn back around. Unfortunately, a lot of dams block their access, and that's where certain groups are now trying to remove these dams. But again, it's happening this time of year. Next week or so, you'll see them really, really abundant. But again, it's somewhere where people are there all day long, but don't get outside of their bubble. What else eats plankton-type animals? Bunker, the Atlantic menhaden, pogie, they call them up north. They go by a bunch of different names. An extremely important fish in the water, but they're filter feeders. And you can see these ones are filtering food from the water. They open their mouths, they collect plankton as they swim by. In recent years, we've started to manage this fishery, protecting them, because it's a forage fish. It's the most important forage fish on the East Coast. So forage fish is something that's dependent on by a lot of other animals to eat. These are schools of menhaden. Last summer, that's a pretty big boat. That's a big sport fisher. That's not just a little 16-foot outboard. That is a good-sized boat. So this will give you a scale of these fish. But again, these numbers have returned in such great, this population has returned in such great numbers that we're seeing them everywhere. And because of that, it's drawing in a lot of other animals. Because of bunker, and I will get to it at the end, was my most memorable experience in recent years, had to do with bunker. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But what else eats plankton around here? Scallops. Everybody loves bay scallops, right? They're super expensive this time of year. This year, at least, they're about $40 a pound. But this is what we know, is that white little delicate nugget of meat that's highly sought after. But this is a live scallop, bright blue eyes, 18 pairs of bright blue eyes they can see pretty well. We never see this because it never comes to market. So it's a gorgeous animal. What else likes to eat them? Because we do, but there's a lot of other animals that eat them. The blue crab. Blue crabs feed on scallops, other fish, and even other blue crabs. They also like to eat mussels, which is another filter feeder. Mussels form these giant beds, filter phytoplankton from the water, but because they form these giant mats on the bottom, they create structure and habitat for other animals, such as the Atlantic rock crab. They eat the mussels. Now there's stuff that comes in, they eat these, the oyster toadfish. A lot of fishermen call them hackleheads. They go by a bunch of different names, but powerful jaw with rounded, blunt teeth that they use for crushing crabs, shrimp, and other hard-shelled animals. But again, they're very common. Everybody's favorite, the sea robin, right? You go fishing, everyone's going to catch a sea robin. Most people around here hate the sea robin because they got this ugly face, sharp spines, big, ugly-looking fins, and they stole your bait because you're trying to catch fluke. They bark, they make noise. They're delicious. They're one of my favorite fish. But one thing that people don't realize with them is those ugly little fins that come down are feet. They're not bottom feeders. They're not scavengers. They're hunting. Don't blink, because in a few seconds you're going to see he's going to catch something. And actually, right about now, I'm a little off. Boom. That was a little juvenile winter flounder. He gets another one. So it's actively hunting. It's not just sitting here picking up garbage off the bottom. It's not a bottom feeder. It's eating the same stuff that a lot of our other fish. Now, just like me, after eating a big meal of winter flounder, I like to take a nap. And that goes with fish too. After they get full, they want to sleep. So they sleep a little bit differently. They want to get comfortable. and they bury in the sand. That's why they have that hard, bony head. That hard, bony head sticks up. It's protecting their body. Their eyes are on top. They can see their surroundings. So, again, hopefully you appreciate a sea robin a little bit more next time you catch one. So what else lives around those mussel beds and eat those crabs and fish that are there? Blackfish, also known as the tautog. Powerful teeth. If you pull back their rubbery lips to look at them, the teeth look just like ours. Very powerful, strong teeth for crushing prey. They also have teeth in their throat, so if they pick up a small little mussel, they could swallow the mussel and just chew it up in their throat as it goes down. Black sea bass also live around the mussel beds, feeding on crabs, shrimp, other fish. Very common fish around here. Again, another tasty fish. Scup, also known as the porgy. Again, lives around these mussel beds. They have a mouthful of round, blunt teeth for crushing hard-shelled animals. But again, this habitat is all there, as you can see, is attracting more and more animals. Probably my favorite fish to photograph on Long Island, though, has got to be the fluke, also known as the summer flounder. They hide out around the mussel beds, and as you can tell, they can change their color instantly to match their surroundings. But again, the mussels attract all these little bait fish, small crabs, small shrimp, things that they eat, large mouth, powerful teeth, and they just sit and wait for their prey to come by. The winter flounder. This is the fish responsible for my addiction to fish. This was the first fish I ever caught when I was 6 years old, and I've been hooked ever since. Big eyes, small little rubbery mouth, but again, they're feeding on crabs and clams and mussels, mostly soft-bodied stuff, so mussels, worms, things that crabs have broken open. This is another flounder we have around here. This is the window pane flounder. So pretty much when people think about flounder, they think of Long Island, they think of three flounders: summer flounder, winter flounder, and the window pane flounder. But we have other species such as the smallmouth flounder, the spot-tail flounder, the four-spot flounder. These are all caught here on Long Island, but again, most people might not even notice or see them. Another flatfish, the hog joker. These are very small, fully grown, they're only about 6 or 8 inches. You find them in the back bay. They got a very tiny mouth. So they're eating mostly plankton or small little worms. They're not going to take a baited hook, so most people never see them, but they're very common. It's called the hog joker. They call it a hog joker because back in the day, farmers would catch them and try to feed it to their hogs, and the hogs would choke on the skin. So they call them hog jokers. Ugly looking face, though. I mean, those big buggy eyes and this little weird upturned mouth. And then talk about ugly, we have the northern stargazer. This is a fish that buries completely in the sand. Its eyes are on top of its head, and it's looking up, staring at the stars. That's why they call it the stargazer. What's always fun with these, when we catch one on the boat, I always get the new guy to, hey, go and hook them for me. Zzz, they get a little zap. They're electrical. They can emit electricity at the back of their head. Not enough to hurt you or kill you, but it's always fun when someone doesn't know when they touch it. Like, what was that? Fully grown, they go about 18 inches. Again, very common. I get a lot of phone calls in the summertime. Hey, what is this crazy fish I caught while I was fluke fishing? And it's a stargazer. What other oddball fish are in our waters that people don't really expect to see? Seahorses. This is the line seahorse. This is our local species. Fully grown, 5 to 6 inches. This is a female. Really cool. This one had some really long cirri coming off its body to blend with the seaweed. Here's a pair. Here's a male and female. Here's the female, rounded belly. Here's the male with a big fat belly. It's not a beer belly, but males get pregnant. This is a pregnant male. And actually, moments after I took this picture, I placed the pair in a bucket, and when I got back to the bucket, he gave birth. So they give birth to anywhere up to about 1,500 babies. In a few seconds, you'll see them in the background. So I took this bucket and just poured it back into the ocean and let them be. But again, seahorses are very common on Long Island. We don't think about it, because you don't catch one when you're fishing generally, so we don't expect to see them. But they are here and in large numbers. The pipefish. The pipefish is a very common fish, and often people catch them when they're pulling minnow nets or seines. It's pretty much a seahorse that's been straightened. I've heard people call them rope fish, pencil fish. They go by a bunch of different names. But they, too, are related to seahorses, so they, too, males give birth. This is a pregnant male. All those little silver dots are its eyes of the babies looking out at you. When they first mate and you pick one up, the belly will be bright orange. The eggs are bright orange. And as they develop and become silver, they're about ready to give birth. And again, they look just like the pipefish, except they're about the diameter of a hair, and they're extremely tiny. All right, so what other cool things around here that are strange? This is probably one of the strangest, and it's not a baby whale. For any of those that have know this video, if you don't, when you get a chance, Google, hey Jay, it's a baby whale, and just watch the video. It's the best 5 minutes you'll see. But it's the ocean sunfish, mola mola. And they call them sunfish because they typically sun themselves on the surface. They've got these two really long fins, dorsal and ventral fin. In a second here, I'll get a good look at his mug. Ugly looking face. But they only eat jellyfish. So they're a favorite of swimmers because they eat jellyfish. But often, though, the swimmers don't like them because they shut down beaches because as that dorsal goes by on a beach, everyone thinks it's a shark and they shut it right down. And this wasn't miles off the beach. This was just outside of Shinnecock Inlet last summer. And he just swam with us. Now, there are some people, and maybe some people in this room, we could discuss it later, that classify them as plankton because they say, they drift, they're kind of not strong swimmers. I've seen them on numerous occasions jump 4 feet out of the water. Or higher. Archie's, I'm sure, seen it as well. A plankton that jumps 4 feet or higher out of the water, I don't think is plankton. So it's a fish, it can swim, it's pretty good at it. But they get the size of a small Volkswagen. They get about 2,000 pounds, so they get big. So what other cool animals we have in here? We have a group of animals known as echinoderms. And the most famous of the echinoderms is the sea star. This is our local sea star, the Forbes sea star. No, it's not an eye. That's just a valve. They pull water in and out of their body, but they do have eyes at the end of each leg. Sensitive for just light and dark, not a visual eye like ours. What other echinoderms are Long Island? Because again, I know most people know about sea stars. They're fairly common. How about serpent stars, also known as brittle stars? This one I got last summer. They call them serpent stars because they move their legs like a big serpent and they walk along the bottom. If a fish tries to grab them by the leg, they'll let the leg go and run away. The leg will grow back pretty quickly. But you find these in muddy bottoms, under clamshells and whatnot. So again, most of us aren't looking in those areas, so we never would come across them. But again, nobody wants to look in the mud, so that's another reason. Another echinoderm, the sea urchin. This is the purple urchin. You might recognize this. You don't find them on the beach too often because they're pretty delicate and they break down. But go into any rubber whale store on Long Island, Port Jeff has them, any of the South Shore seashores where you get your knickknacks for your tours and stuff. You'll see these. They're known as a test. It's a skeleton of a sea urchin. We have sand dollars on Long Island. Again, most people think of Florida. You go to Florida, you find the sand dollars all over the place. But these are extremely abundant. At Stony Brook, if we do a trawl in the ocean, sometimes our trawl will get filled up with just sand dollars. Go to places like Smith's Point after a big winter storm, you will find them on the beach. But the reason it's not white is because it's alive, and it's got that skin over it. The white ones you see in stores are bleached. That's just their skeleton. Another echinoderm, the sea cucumber. Often I get a lot of phone calls about this. Chris, I was clamming. I came across this slimy turd. That's usually how they describe it. Because it doesn't look anything like this. It's just they've raked it up and it's just this little round, slimy, nasty looking thing. But it's a sea cucumber. They're filter feeders, they're tridivores. They'll put these arms up, they catch the food and they swing it back down to their mouth, which is in the middle. So that goes that one comes out, that one goes in. When they get spooked, they close and they bury back on the sand. So when the clamor gets it, that's the stage they're finding is this little round up turd. But when you see it like this, though, it kind of looks like an octopus. And people are like, there's no octopus around here, so it couldn't be. But there are. This was an octopus that I collected in Shinnecock Bay a couple years ago. Give you a scale of size, it's a tiny little one. But fully grown, they get around here, they can get about 10 pounds. They are fairly common. I usually can come across a few each year, but the thing is, they're such a cryptic animal, they spend most of their time hiding. So it's not like you're just going to stumble upon them. They're deep in rock crevices, but they are here. Masters of camouflage, changing their color, grabbing a little crab and watching it walk right back on the tips of its legs. Right back to its den. So if you're ever snorkeling or diving and you find a hole with a bunch of crab shells, clam shells and stuff right in front of it, that's a telltale sign of an octopus. They eat and they throw their waste right back outside the shell, outside their den. Now, some of the other odd stuff that's along that people don't typically realize are tropical fish. We get a lot of tropical fish. They drift in on the Gulf Stream. Most of them come in with little patches of sargassum, but this is a sargassum fish, which is a type of angler fish. We also get the striated frogfish. This one I collected in Shinnecock Bay, as well as this one. Anglerfish are known as anglerfish because they fish. This is a video, this is not a still, so just keep your eye on this. It's sitting, waiting, waiting, waiting. That's all they do is wait. But then when something good comes around, they want to get it closer to them. They wiggle their lure. Oh, what's that? Ooh, done. It's over. So they wiggle that first dorsal fin. Every species of anglerfish has a different lure. His was a little worm. The sargassum fish that I showed earlier is a little white dot of cotton. It looks like a little cotton ball, depending on where they're living. But as you notice, that little killifish was like, ooh, what's that? In a blink of an eye, it's eating it. Now, these fish are ambush predators, and they can extend their stomach to take in big prey, because you never know how big of an item is going to swim by. So talk about indigestion with a live fish, though. Give him a second here. The fish fights back a little bit. There's a little bit. And he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm going to go rest somewhere else. Modified fins, almost like feet, so they can hold on to the rocks and current and just sit there. Now, everyone's like, all right, these tropical fish, again, you're out there all the time, so you probably see them. They are super abundant. You don't have to be out there every day to see them. You just have to go out there in the summertime. I'll give you an example of how abundant they can be. This is one picture at Ponquag Bridge in Hampton Bays. These are all spot fin butterflies. The whole bridge was like that this day. If you felt like you were in the tropics. So what are the tropicals? Big eye. This is a short big eye. Every time I see one, I get super excited. I get even more excited when I collect one and I take a selfie. So, it's like trying to take an underwater camera and in the current and taking pictures. It was quite comical, but I did get my selfie. We get tropical puffers. We get the bandtail puffer. When it's threatened, it puffs up. We get the striped birdfish. When it's threatened, it puffs up. We get cowfish, slender filefish, orange filefish, look downs, moonfish, blue angels, shamefaced crabs. This is a really cool crab. He's got two different types of claws. They like to eat snails. So with this one, he'll grab the snail and like a can opener, spin the snail around, open the can, and then tear it apart with this. But again, this is another tropical crab that I collected in Shinnecock Bay. We get some pretty big tropical fish also. Stingrays. This is a rough-tailed stingray. To give you an idea of scale, because it's kind of a little tough to judge, from here to there is 5 feet. Scissoray was 5 feet wide and about 10 feet long. We were in 3 feet of water. I had a group of second graders on our research vessel, and this came on board. I've seen these kids now multiple years later, and that's all they ever talk about is this stingray. Me, the captain, and the mate were kind of not looking forward to it, but it took us a while to get it out. It had 2 spines on it that were this long, size of steak knives, so we were able to get it back in the water. What other big tropical type animals we have around here? Well, we got sea turtles. The green sea turtle, the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, the loggerhead sea turtle. Now, this was a funny story with this one. This was last summer. I was 32 miles offshore. You wouldn't know how calm it was, but I was super far offshore. And these turtles will come to the surface to sleep. They sun themselves. And at one particular point, we came up to one, and it was swimming like a top with its head upside down. So we thought it got hit by a boat, so we approached it to see, all right, maybe it's got hit by a boat, maybe it's wrapped in fishing line, let's see if we can help it. When we got up to it, I put my GoPro in the water, and I realized he's fine. He was just upset because he had 2 visitors hanging out with him. Those are cobia. Those are 4-foot-long cobia. Cobia they tend to follow larger animals and hide in their shade for protection from other animals or to ambush stuff. He was just very unhappy, though. You could see he kept watching them. And every time he dove down, they would follow him. We tried to help him and tried to catch the cobia, but they were on to us, so we weren't able to catch the cobia. Another sea turtle, we get the leatherback sea turtle. It's the world's largest sea turtle. It can get about 2,000 pounds also. Again, the size of a small car. It's huge. Unfortunately, this one got hit by a boat. Because they're reptiles, they don't have gills, they have lungs, they have to come to the surface. Coming to the surface is a little bit risky. And again, this one paid the price for it. So we're talking about the ocean. What else is out in the ocean that we're all afraid of? Sharks, right? So we're going to talk about some sharks. And you never know when a Sharknado is going to come, so you got to be prepared. So yes, we have a lot of sharks on Long Island. Actually, a good friend of mine, Toby Curtis, will be speaking later today on some of the work that myself, Toby, I think Greg, I thought I saw him here somewhere, are doing with the Long Island Shark Collaboration. He's going to do that later. But I'm involved with these guys tagging sharks. But people don't realize how many sharks are right here on Long Island, close to the beach. This is not miles off. Actually, this one, we were able to smell the barbecue on the surf from people cooking hamburgers. But this is one that we eventually caught and tagged and released. It's a Mako Shark. So, I mean, we have Makos. He was interested in the camera. Like I said, we eventually caught him. We tagged him and let him go. And then that shark, a year and 7 months later, this same shark, was caught off of Africa. So 2,200 miles on the other side of the ocean. So it's really cool to that kind of stuff. But other sharks we get the blue shark. Here's a tagged one just getting ready to be released. Duskies, Mako's blues, browns, Duskies, tigers, hammerheads, the list goes on. So there's a lot of sharks in our waters. And again, people don't necessarily think of Long Island having sharks, but they're there. Even white sharks. Now, I'm not going to get into a lot of this because Toby's going to talk about this later, but this is a juvenile white shark. They mostly feed on fish, but what do the big ones eat? Seals, and we have seals on Long Island also. So this is a gray seal pup. Here's another one. When they first are born, they have a white lanugo coat. This one I found on Dune Road, and I took a couple pictures. There was fur everywhere. When I went back the next day to see if it was still there, it was gone, but the fur was everywhere. It had shed its coat to go on it. They get fairly large. They have a head like a horse, though. So when you see one, it's really noticeable compared to harbor seals, which are much more common around here. This was at Montauk. This is Shinnecock Bay. We also get harp seals. This is a yearling harp seal. We also get cetaceans. These are bottlenose dolphins, which I like to call the not fun dolphins, mainly because this is all they do. And here's a little mother and calf. And what I mean is this is all they do is because when you see the common dolphin, they're jumping out of the water, they're bow riding, they get almost like excited to see you. They come racing up to the boat to jump around the bow. If you look, there's a couple calves in this picture, one right there. This was only a few miles outside of Shinnecock Inlet. Generally, you see these a lot further offshore, but again, they were fairly close. Other cetaceans, we get some of the big whales. The fin whale, the second largest whale in the world, are common around here. This is, again, 32 miles offshore, and look at the size of the boat that's out there. It was almost like a highway out there, and they often will get hit by boats, and this one actually did. And this was a calf with it. This was a small one. But this one got lucky. It survived. This one, not so lucky. This is a humpback that washed up in Tiana Bay, I think it was 4 years ago now. When the Riverhead Foundation did their necropsy, they found that it was hit by a boat. That was the cause of death to this whale. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned how bunker were responsible for one of my most memorable experiences on the water in recent years. And it had to do with bunker and whales. So this was a humpback whale that was lunge feeding on schools of bunker. Here, the bunker trying to get away from it. So we were out there fishing. We saw this giant splash, so we kind of went over to see what that was. And we could see schools of bunker on the surface. And all of a sudden, they get really nervous, and then this happened. So what they do is they dive down to the bottom. They swim as fast as they can, open up their giant mouth, and just scoop up a whole school. This was another day. But again, look how close the beach is. I think this day we were 3 miles off the beach. And we were watching this whale for about 2.5 hours, lunge feeding. It was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I had people on the boat that never fished before. They didn't care that we weren't fishing, but it was exciting just to see that. And again, they're here in large numbers now because of the bunker. You protect the food, the animals come back with it. But my most memorable one, this was pretty cool. This was very cool, but my most memorable one was this. That's the Ponquag Bridge. We were less than a half a mile off the beach. This whale was also lunge feeding, but in 20 feet of water, it can't do that. So it was just jumping sideways through the water, catching it. But if you were sitting on the beach that day, you would have seen quite the show. And the reason this is my favorite outing is because that bridge, the Ponquag Bridge, that's where probably 90% of the pictures I posted today on this talk came from. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of doom and gloom, but there's light. You know, again, there's a lot of cool stuff here on Long Island. Again, this was all within 2 years, these pictures. Nothing longer. It's all recent stuff. So there's cool stuff out there, and the more you're aware of it, the more you can help protect them. And with that, I'm Fish Guy Photos. You can follow me. I'm always posting about local wildlife, so if you like it, give me a follow. I'm going to be here all day to talk more, but I think I got it quickly on this one. So if there's some questions, I have a couple minutes, I guess.
Yes, we have
Thank you.
We do have time for questions, so if you would hit the mic. Comment, Daniel Carpin. You didn't show the video of the fin whale that was swimming
wasn't
in the water
me.
with you.
That was my buddy Todd Gardner. You got to get him to come back next year.
Thank you.
So thanks so much for the presentation. It was wonderful. For the bridge, the tropicals in the bridge, what's the depth on that? And did you use a light? And if so, what kind of light?
No, so the bridge, so like that school of butterflies, was as soon as you enter under the bridge, so it was probably about 10 feet of water. But even if you're not scuba certified, throw on a mask and snorkel along the bulkhead in 3 feet of water, you could see butterfly fish, angelfish. So they're in very shallow water. They're not always deep. So again, you don't need scuba. I scuba because I want to spend more time down there with the camera. As far as lighting goes, I use a flash with the pictures. So that's why the pictures are crisp and clean color, but some of the videos are green because I don't have a big enough flash or a big enough light board to light up the water to get rid of that green color. But I do flashlight only for nighttime when I'm doing night dives.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Rebecca LaBarca. I enjoy kayaking, and I was curious, what's a great place to go kayaking to see some of these creatures?
Well, I love Shinnecock Bay. That's one of my favorite places. And one of the biggest problems on Long Island, unfortunately, is access. You know, not being a resident in all these towns, you kind of get difficulty. But Shinnecock East is a county park. I'll often put my kayak in at the back side of there and then paddle into the marsh or in the back areas there. The Peconic River is another place that's really good because it's public access. You know, it really depends on what you're looking for. You know, bird-wise, a lot of the back marshes are great. To see some things like the whales, if you have an ocean kayak, put on any of the ocean beaches. Further to the west, you probably have a better chance of seeing them. But the dolphins, especially like the Bottlenose Dolphins, the last couple of years they've been along the whole South Shore, you know, pretty close to the beach.
Chris?
You can, but it's a permit. It's open to non-residents, but last year was, I think, $90. It's not a cheap. Yeah, maybe, but there's only like a couple spots. It's not as abundant. Yeah. Yes.
What kind of research is being done at Flax Pond, if any?
I'll be honest with you. I don't know everything that's at Flax Pond because I'm the manager of the Southampton Marine Research Center. So I don't always know exactly what's going on up there. Flax Pond, they do a lot more finfish stuff, I do know, than I do at our lab. Our lab is a lot more ocean acidification, harmful algal bloom, and seagrass community type stuff. Flax Pond, I know there was one student doing work with sea bass, but I don't know all the details offhand. Yes? I don't know.
You've never seen?
No.
No.
How related is the northern stargazer to the anglerfish?
What's that?
How related is the northern stargazer to the anglerfish?
Different fish altogether. Yeah, I don't know where the family lines. Unfortunately, I'm not good too much with that, but it's not an angler at all. It actually they don't have the modified fins like feet and legs. They actually completely bury in the sand. So yeah, it's a different line. Okay. Yes. The goosefish is an angler, but yeah, they have the lure and everything. I personally have not ever caught one. I've come across the jawbones out at Montauk. You'll find the skulls wash up from the commercial guys that are flaying them as they bring them back to shore, but I haven't, no. It's a wild looking fish. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, actually with some of the shark tagging we did last summer, we caught more sandbars and duskies than some of the other species. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sue. I was wondering about the dolphins. Are the dolphins there all year long, or is there a certain time?
No, they're mostly summer. There are cetaceans, and Artie's here. He can answer that better. But there are winter cetaceans in our areas. But most of those, like the common dolphins, the fun ones I like to say, they're definitely a warmer water species. The bottlenose, I've only ever seen them here in the summertime.
Are there?
Super warm water, yeah.
Are there tours to go see the dolphins?
Yes, speak to Artie. Yes, they do whale watching out of Montauk.
Thank you very much.
I have one more comment.
Yeah.
I know that Lino's doing the field trips. SOMAS that would be a great field trip.
We can make that happen, next year.
That would be fun next.
Yeah, maybe. We definitely do something with that. We did that with Nesmia last year. They came out for some field trips. Okay, cool. I said I'm going to be here all day, so I'd be happy to chat and talk. Thank you.